Hey, what is up, everybody? I'm here to give you guys my Flashback Friday video. This is going to be Season 1, Episode 2. I know I've been slacking on doing these videos for the past month. I haven't done them in a while. Well, that's because I've been busy with school starting back up and everything. I've been putting my focus more towards school and trying to get a better feel for my schedule. But now that I finally have, I've decided that I'm going to be bringing these back every Fridays. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So yeah, I'm going to be continuing. The WWE Network, as you know, releases a series of these every Friday, and I'm going to and when I do these, I'm not going to review every show that they have in that series because the video would be way too long. I'm just going to review smaller shows. So this is continuing with the D-Generation X version of it, and a lot of the build up will be kind of focused on the previous episode, which I am going to be making a playlist for the series, and it will be in that video. This is obviously a week after D-Generation X was finally formed, even though we didn't really fully find out the name of D-Generation X. You know, this is kind of being built off the fact of everything that happened between Bret the Hitman Hart and the Patriot, how they were building up to their title match. I forget exactly the name of the at Ground Zero, at In Your House Ground Zero. This was building off the fact about Paul Bear telling The Undertaker that Kane was coming, whether or not Stone Cold Steve Austin was going to be able to wrestle at Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match at In Your House Ground Zero after getting injured by Owen Hart. Brian Pillman having to wrestle in a dress and until he wins a match on Raw, and he was continuing his feud with Goldust. And I can't really think of anything else that was Rocky Maivia turning heel and joining up with the Nation of Domination. So there was a lot of stuff that took place on the previous episode, as I talked about. So that kind of lets you know what's going to be taking place in this episode. So in this episode, it won't really be focused as much on storylines and stuff and background information because I kind of just went through it. But if you want to check out why this stuff is happening, I believe most of the stuff from the last episode will be that I covered last week is going to be continuation. So just click on the playlist below and it would tell us. But yes, today I'm going to be reviewing WWF Monday Night Raw from August 18th, 1997. Like I already kind of just talked about the story. So now that I've kind of discussed that, let's get to the actual video itself. Okay, so we have the show itself. We have Jerry the King Lawler, Vince McMahon, and Jim Ross on commentary for it. Even though Vince wasn't actually out there, but he was. He is going to be on commentary for this show. And something I did mention that this is still at a time where the WWF was still transitioning into the Attitude Era. They weren't fully there yet, but they were getting to that point. And I would say they were almost there, but not quite there yet. And obviously this was at a time when they were still competing against WCW when they were getting their asses kicked by WCW. And the first thing that happens is Vince McMahon interviews Ravish and Rick Rude, and this is obviously backlash from when Shawn Michaels revealed his insurance policy and Ravish and Rick Rude, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley was part of that insurance policy. And Ravish and Rick Rude comes out and he talks about how he said that all of you sweat hogs should shut up while I'm talking. So he still kept his old gimmick a little bit, and then he talks about how that if you pay for Rude, you're gonna get everything that you deserve. Pretty much talking, and Vince McMahon's trying to ask him who paid him, if it was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, if it was Shawn Michaels. But Ravish and Rick Rude really isn't giving much of an answer. All he's just saying pretty much is that you have to pay for Rude to get protection. And Vince McMahon tries to ask him if he's protected any other superstars, but he won't answer. He pretty much just doesn't answer. He just kind of dances around the questions, and he just kind of talks about how having Ravish and Rick Rude on your side pays. Overall, I thought this was a very good interview segment by Ravish and Rick Rude, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very enjoyable. Obviously, too, I didn't even mention, but even in the beginning of the show, they had the old WWF Monday Night Raw intro from 1997. If you can easily look it up and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's very weird to see pyro now because obviously now WWF doesn't have any pyro. So it's very weird to see it again. And overall, I really enjoyed this opening segment, and I thought it was a very nice way to kind of address what happened the previous week with, after the main event between Shawn Michaels and Mankind. Okay, so next, Owen Hart and the British Bulldog are backstage, and the British Bulldog, they cut a promo on the Legion of Doom because they're about to have a match with them, and the British Bulldog talk about how tonight they're going to get a taste of what they're going to get at Ground Zero, and then Owen Hart says that once you get in the ring with them tonight, you're going to find out exactly what the Hart Foundation's all about, and then we're going to walk away with WWF World Tag Team titles at Ground Zero. And they say that, and then they mock him by saying, "Oh, what a rush." Oh, well, I thought this was a pretty decent interview. This was obviously to build up to their tag team match, because this was used as a way to build up to that fatal 4-way tag team match at In Your House Ground Zero. So I thought that was good. And yeah, I want to make sure I mention this. I forgot to mention where Ravish and Rick Rude is now, because I don't know if we're going to see him again later on in the show. So I'm just not going to. I'm going to hold off on that before before the end of the show. If we don't see him by the end of the show, then I won't mention it again. Okay, so next you see Shawn Michaels backstage arguing with Commissioner Sergeant Slaughter, and I'm assuming he's upset because Shawn Michaels is supposed to team up with Hunter Hearst Helmsley to face Undertaker and Mankind, and I'm assuming because Shawn Michaels is a heel and he wants to get out of it, he doesn't want to wrestle that match because he's got to face Undertaker at Ground Zero. So overall, I thought it was good. You couldn't actually hear it, but I thought that it was nice that they showed it, so I thought that was fine. Okay, so we had the first actual match on the show. It was Owen Hart and the British Bulldog, who at the time was the WWF European Champion, and they faced the Legion of Doom. And overall, I thought this was a pretty good, pretty decent actually tag team match. It was a nice match. LOD in the beginning destroy Owen Hart. Hawk ended up dropping Owen Hart like face first, and then eventually Hawk went to charge into the post, but he went shoulder first after Owen Hart moved out of the way. The British Bulldog and Owen Hart get the heat on Hawk. They beat the crap out of him. They hit some nice power slams, knee drops. I thought they hit some nice double team moves, just really getting the heat on him. And then eventually Animal gets the hot tag onto Owen Hart. He starts going off on him. Eventually he hits a neck breaker, and eventually the Godwins make their way down to the ring, because this made sense because they're involved in that fatal 4-way tag team match in Your House Ground Zero. And this distracts the referee, and this allows Henry O. Godwin to come in and hit Animal right off the head with a bucket behind the referee's back. Owen Hart covers Animal and gets the win. And then afterwards, everybody just starts fighting with each other. The officials have to come break it up. The Legion of Doom are able to fight everybody off, and the Legion of Doom end up standing tall. And overall, I thought that was fine. I thought it was decent. The match itself, I thought was a pretty decent match. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. It was pretty decent. Nothing fantastic, but decent. And obviously the aftermath, I didn't really mention for the commentator. So Jerry the King Lawler at the time was the heel commentator for Monday Night Raw, and then eventually he was the heel commentator. Him and Jay went on to become one of the best commentating teams in WWF. Then eventually he went on to become a face commentator in 2007, and then eventually he was probably one of the longest commentators to last in WWF, and then eventually he was moved to SmackDown in 2015, and then but he still did the pay-per-views and stuff. Then eventually he was moved off the SmackDown commentary team to just be a pre-show analyst for both Raw, SmackDown, and the pay-per-views. And then eventually he would host the Hall of Fame inductions, like the Hall of Fame ceremony. Then eventually they now just utilize him on a part-time basis, which I think is a fine role for him. As for Vince McMahon, obviously this was at a time where they were slowly transitioning him to become the biggest heel probably ever in the history of professional wrestling. And they were slowly transitioning to having it be well known that he was the owner of the WWF. Jim Ross, partnered with Jerry the King Lawler. He was at the time the play-by-play face guy. Eventually, he went on to have some stints where he was fired, had the Bell Palsy thing happen, and then eventually he has been in and out of the WWE. Now he's working with them on a part-time basis, mainly through NXT. So JR is in a pretty good spot. As for the other men in this match, Owen Hart obviously, fortunately, passed away. He died at over the age of 1999, I believe it was. The British Bulldog has since passed away as well, which sucks. So that kind of makes this match a little tough to watch. LOD, I believe Animal was the one that's dead, which sucks because this match, only one of the competitors in this match is alive, and the last time you saw him was back in 2012. So that really sucks. And the Godwins, I never cared for the Godwins. They were one of those 90s fails tag teams. I believe I looked up in the last video, which is in the playlist, what happened to the Godwins exactly. Because I believe they just randomly broke up as a team. They added more people and stuff, but then they eventually just broke up. I don't remember, but I did look it up. I don't remember exactly what happened to them, but I know they just shortly, quietly disbanded. And I believe, yeah, that's about it. Nothing else really to say, but overall, I thought this was a pretty decent tag team match. Okay, so next, Mankind's backstage, and he's cutting a promo talking about how his mind and his body has not yet forgiven him about what the Undertaker has done to him. And he says that after our history, Undertaker, it's unknown about what kind of partner you're going to get from me tonight. I may be the most loyal partner, but then again, I may be the most unforgiving partner. But we'll soon have to see. And then he says, have a nice day. I thought this was a very good promo, and I kind of like how they had it in there that Mankind and Undertaker had a history with each other, and they were questioned whether or not they were going to be able to work together as a team. Because normally now what happens in wrestling is if, because obviously Mankind's babyface at this point, normally if two wrestlers just turn babyface after feud, and team together after feuding for a while, with one of them being the heel and one of them being the face, they don't really play up on that. So I like that they played up on it, and it made sense. Obviously I think they will work together as a team, but I like that they're putting that in there, and Mankind was very good on the mic here, so overall I thought this was just pretty good. Alright, so next, Shawn Michaels is backstage. I just lost $100 right there. And what else? Shawn Michaels says that he's asked to give his thoughts about being in the tag team match later on in the night, and he says that he feels like he's still being shafted by the WWF because they keep backing him in the corner. He talked about how when he cost the Undertaker the WWF Championship at SummerSlam, it was an accident. He did what he was supposed to do, and he did his job. But now everybody is constantly putting him into a corner. He has to constantly, he has to now wrestle Undertaker, even though he's not supposed to be seen with him until Ground Zero. He has to wrestle Mankind again after defeating him last week. And he talks about how Hunter Hearst Helmsley isn't his tag team partner. He says he doesn't need tag team partners, but he says that Sergeant Slaughter continuously backs him into a corner, and he says that the WWF is going to find out that when you back him into a corner, it's a mistake. Good promo by Shawn Michaels. Okay, so next match was Brian Christopher versus Flash Funk. With Sunny as the special guest ring announcer, and obviously everybody knows Sunny. She was signed to the WWF because she was hot. Obviously when you see her now, that's clearly not the case. And yeah, pretty much everybody has been inside Sunny. That's pretty much how the case. That's her whole career. You can clearly see that she knew nothing about being in the WWF because she completely messed up where Brian Christopher was from. She was probably pretty much, yeah, she just didn't know anything about wrestling, and she was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011, believe it or not. And then the build-up was Brian Christopher wanted to have this match to prove that his match that he had previously on Raw was a fluke, and Flash Funk, because he cut this in his little promo. Flash Funk did not want him to get used as a stepping stone for Brian Christopher. They have a match. Really wasn't all that good. It was pretty short, but wasn't that great. Brian Christopher is about to win, and Jerry the King Lawler, who's Brian Christopher's father, wants him to use his pile driver, and this distracts Brian Christopher. And while he's on the top rope, the referee's distracted by Lawler. Flash Funk hangs him up on the top rope, and then he hits the 450 for the win, and that was it, pretty much. And Flash Funk, obviously, someone was signed from ECW, and they really didn't do anything with him. They gave him this Flash Funk character that was stupid, because the WWF always does this with anybody they put in from outside their company, which is weird. And obviously, I don't even know what really happened to Flash Funk. I'd have to I believe I looked that up last time. I saw him at a top rope show, not top rope, a indie show here a couple of years ago. I think he's working indies. I don't know the last time we recently saw Flash Funk, because he was released in 1999, which he asked for. He went on to wrestle in the indies. He's made some returns to the WWF, and now he's working indie shows. And obviously, Brian Christopher went on to become Grandmaster Sexay, and that's pretty much what he's been known for. The last time we saw him was in 2011, when he came out and confronted Jerry the King Lawler, which was kind of uncomfortable. And it was kind of one of the worst returns ever, because nobody remembered who he was, so it was weird. And then what else? And obviously I just mentioned pretty much what Sunny's been doing, and she was doing a lot. So yeah, overall the match gets a star and a half, because it really wasn't all that good. Okay, so next, Undertaker cuts a promo backstage, and he said that he's run out of patience with Shawn Michaels, and he said that tonight he's going to beat up Shawn Michaels so bad that he's not going to make it to Ground Zero, and he tells Mankind that he doesn't forget, and if he gets out of line, he's going to destroy him just like Shawn Michaels. Overall, good promo by Undertaker. Okay, so next match was the Sultan with the Iron Sheik ringside versus Ken Shamrock. And yes, the Sultan was a character. This was at a time, like I said, during that early 90s period where they brought in just some terrible characters for the WWF, and the Sultan was one of them. And Ken Shamrock obviously was somebody, though, that they brought in who was part of the real fighting world. I believe it was UFC. I don't know exactly. And he was brought in during WrestleMania 13, and then he became a wrestler, and you could clearly see he was just a machine. He looked like he could rip your head off. And I think Ken Shamrock actually was a pretty cool wrestler. Yeah, he pretty much dominates the Sultan here. The Sultan gets some offense in. He throws Ken Shamrock's shoulder first into the steps, and behind the referee's back, the Iron Sheik comes in and hits him in the back with a flag. But then eventually Ken Shamrock makes his comeback. He hits a belly-to-belly throw on the Sultan. Then he brings Iron Sheik into the ring, hits one on him. And then he gets the Sultan into the ankle lock, and the Sultan taps out for the win. Ken Shamrock goes over. They were clearly trying to build him as a strong threat because they clearly had big plans for him. And the aftermath is the Iron Sheik. I don't know if it. I know this stint didn't really last too long in the WWF. He would eventually go on to leave, and now he just does a lot of drugs now. And he cuts very weird promos in indie shows. And he has hilarious tweets. And obviously, the Iron Sheik's probably one of the most controversial wrestlers ever to lace up his boots. And he's been featured on at midnight. He's been, he just has very weird. He's a very controversial character. The Sultan obviously became known as Rikishi, and obviously everybody know how Rikishi, failed in WWF. He went on to become tag team champions, and now his sons are wrestling in the WWF. And then obviously Ken Shamrock went on to become Intercontinental Champion. He joined up with Vince McMahon when he turned heel, known as in the Corporation faction. And then he ended up leaving. I don't remember exactly why he left, but he ended up being, I believe he was gone by like the end of '99, maybe early 2000. And I think he probably went back to fighting or something. But look it up real quick. Let me look it up. But I believe that's what happened to him. Yep, so let's see. Ken Shamrock. Yeah, he wanted to go back to MMA. But he's wrestled on the Indies. He was in. He went to TNA for a stint, and then he left the sport. He made his last appearance in June of 2004 in TNA. Pretty much for the reasons I just stated, and then but yeah, so pretty much Ken Shamrock. I'm not sure if he would have been a big star, but I think they tried to make it, but obviously he didn't really want to do it anymore, so that happens. But overall, I thought this match, though, was just average pretty much. It was just pretty much there to make Ken Shamrock look strong, though, and I thought that accomplished that goal, so that's why it's getting 2 stars. But yeah, this match was just really 2 stars. Nothing special. Okay, so next, the Nation of Domination come out, and they order Jim Ross to get in there and interview him. And obviously, if you didn't know who was in the Nation of Domination at the time, it was Farouk, D'Lo Brown, Kama Mustafa, and the new member who had just joined the previous week, Rocky Maivia, which he explains why he does later on. But Ahmed Johnson, no, not Ahmed Johnson, Farouk cuts a promo talking about how he kicked Ahmed Johnson out because all along he was just a black guy that wanted to be white. The white was waiting to get out of him, and he said that he wouldn't last one day trying to be white, and he said that that's why they kicked him out of the group. And he talks about how Savio Vega and Crush, they dumped them in the trash, and Farouk's the one that made them a star, and Farouk accepts their challenge to face them at In Your House Ground Zero in a street fight. And then Rocky Maivia says that the reason, well, Farouk then says that Rocky Maivia tried to do the right thing, but all you fans turned on him. He tried to do things the American way. Rocky Maivia talks about how all you guys chanted after I was die, Rocky, die, after I left my blood, sweat, and tears for you people. He talks about how he became, the youngest Intercontinental Champion of all time, but all you guys do is just ridiculed me. And he said that this isn't a race thing, this is to make something out of my career. And he talks about how DOA is the most racist faction out there because they pretend to be something that they're not. And then DOA comes up on the screen, and I don't know which one it was, but one of them says that they want the Nation of Domination to come fight them in the parking lot where they can't be protected by Sergeant Slaughter. Overall, I thought this was a good promo segment. I thought this kind of explained why Rocky Maivia joined the faction, and obviously it was another way to push the feud between DOA and the Nation of Domination. Even though I wasn't really a huge fan of the DOA faction, it made no sense. And obviously I'm not going to mention the aftermath right now because I think we're going to see them again later on in this show, so I will talk about it when I get there. Okay, so next you see Dustin Rhodes, Terry Reynolds having fun at the beach with their daughter. Not sure what this was supposed to mean, but that's what happened. I don't know what it was. You guys can tell me in the comments. Maybe I'll find out later more about this more later on, but not sure what this was supposed to set up. But I'm not going to really mention this anymore. Dustin Rhodes obviously was signed to the WWF under Goldust, and he's still with the WWF to this day. He's had some moments where he's been there and then he hasn't. You know, he left, I believe, in like 2000, and then he came back in 2002. Then he left again. Then he came back in 2006. Then he left, and then he came back in 2008. Then he left in 2010. I don't know if he left, but he got hurt and he went into a backstage role, and then he came back wrestling again in 2013 and looks his best. And he's had some great matches, and he's had the best run probably in his 2013 to now run. And then obviously he went to TNA as Black Reign. So obviously Dustin Rhodes is a very successful character for the WWF as Goldust, but Dustin Rhodes is just a great talent. Alright, so next, China and Hunter Hearst Helmsley are backstage, and I forgot to mention, but it happened earlier in the show. I was going to mention it at the end, but I'll mention it now. You saw earlier in the night that you saw Hunter Hearst Helmsley and China also talking to Sergeant Slaughter, and he gets asked if he's afraid to face the Undertaker, and afraid of this tag match, and he said that he's not afraid to face Undertaker or Mankind, but he doesn't want to get involved in Shawn Michaels' wars. Because he doesn't really feel fit to do that. But then they cut him off because then they realize that it goes backstage to DOA and the Nation of Domination, and they get into a brawl, and the Nation of Domination are pretty much kicking their ass. And then the Baliqwas, I believe the name was, steal their motorcycles, so DOA chase after them. The Baliqwas, I have no clue who they are, so I couldn't really tell you anything about them. I really didn't care for this part of the show. Hunter Hearst Helmsley cut a pretty decent promo, but I didn't really care for that they cut him off to go to this backstage fight. I get you wanted to make the show feel like it was simultaneous, but it really wasn't worth it, so whatever. It's really weird for me to see Hunter Hearst Helmsley and China like together, obviously because they hate each other after everything that's happened, and it makes me kind of mad at Hunter Hearst Helmsley because he kept China from being inducted into the Hall of Fame while she was alive. And now she's probably not going to get into the Hall of Fame until she's dead. And I think that's exactly the way Hunter Hearst Helmsley wanted it. And don't tell me that's not, because I think that's how he did. I forgot to mention what happened with DOA and the Nation of Domination and everybody. DOA, I looked it up in the last video, so click on the playlist and you'll see it. I'm not going to look it up again. Nation of Domination... Farouk was the leader of the faction, but then the Rocky Maivia kicked him out, and then Farouk went on to become a part of a tag team, and then he became known as Ron Simmons, and always says "damn." So it's kind of weird to see him cut a promo on him not saying that. D'Lo Brown became a pretty decently successful single star. He's been European and Intercontinental Champion. Kama became known as the Godfather, then the Good Father. And then the Godfather again. I actually have met the Godfather before. I believe I have a picture of it on Facebook somewhere. And then Rocky Maivia obviously became one of the biggest stars of the Attitude Era, known as The Rock. He's been multi-time WWF, WCW, Intercontinental, and Tag Team Champion. And he's done it all in the wrestling business. He became one of the all-time greats, and now he's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. So obviously The Rock's the most successful, and then obviously the Baliqwas, I have no fucking clue who they are, so I couldn't tell you where they went, and I have no clue how to spell it if I looked it up, so yeah. So I forgot to mention where they are, so I apologize for that. So that's the aftermath of all these factions. So yeah. Okay, so next we had Jesse James versus um Brian Pillman. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. And if Brian Pillman won, he would have to he would be able to take off the dress because he had the stipulation where he had to wear a dress on Raw until he won a match on Raw because he lost to Goldust at SummerSlam that year. So yeah, that was the stipulation, and the match pretty much was a basic wrestling match. Road Dogg misses a crossbody. Jesse James misses a crossbody. Sorry, and Brian Pillman hits a DDT on him. Then Goldust and Martinez come out, and Goldust hits an elbow drop on Jesse James, causing a DQ, which means but Brian Pillman's disqualified, and then afterwards, which made sense because Goldust wants to see him wear a dress. So Michael Cole interviews Goldust, and he said that he just wanted to see him wear a dress for one more week. So Brian Pillman gets on the mic and says, "Well, Goldust, I bet you never want to see me ever again." He's like, "Well, yeah. Why don't you just leave? Get out of here." So Brian Pillman makes a deal that Goldust should give him one more match, and if he loses, he will leave WWF forever. And if Goldust agrees to it at first, but then Brian Pillman says, "But if I win, I get to have Martinez's services for 30 days." Goldust doesn't agree to the match. Brian Pillman tries to goad him into it by calling him a coward, but Goldust says, "I ain't gonna do a stipulation like that." Then Brian Pillman then talks about how that daughter that I talked about earlier in the video is actually Brian Pillman's daughter. So Goldust rushes the win, and Brian Pillman runs away. Martinez agrees to the match on Goldust's behalf, and Goldust is like, "Why would you do that?" So obviously this was like as if they knew something. And from what I remember, Brian Pillman, the aftermath is Brian Pillman. Well, obviously Jesse James is obviously became known as Road Dogg. That's why I botched and accidentally called him Road Dogg because I'm just so used to that name. And now he's the head writer of a SmackDown, which he's doing a terrible job at. But other than that, Road Dogg's been a pretty good name for the business. Goldust, I already mentioned. Martinez, I actually don't know what happened to her. Brian Pillman, unfortunately, he ended up going over, and before the storyline could finish, he ended up dying because I believe he overdosed on drugs, which sucked. Brian Pillman, I thought, was a perfect fit for the WWF. He especially would have been a perfect fit during the Attitude Era. He could have had some great feuds against Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, The Rock, Mankind even. I think he has feuded with Mankind, but even when Terry Funk came in as Chainsaw Charlie, he would have done really well against him. But unfortunately, Brian Pillman had to miss a great era. He even would have been fantastic for the hardcore division, but fortunately wasn't meant to be, and it sucked. But this match really wasn't anything special. I'm gonna give it. But I thought Brian Pillman pulled off like the gimmick of the dress very well. But I'm gonna give this match a star and 3/4. It really wasn't that good. I didn't really care, but it wasn't like a match that really made me mad. I like that they actually had some logical sense in here with Goldust getting involved and everything. I like the promo segment of building up to the feud between Goldust and Brian Pillman. Kind of makes me sad seeing this after what's happened to Brian Pillman, but yeah, obviously this match kind of just wasn't the greatest. Okay, so next Vader's backstage, and he says that he's scheduled to have a match with the Patriot, who at the time was the #1 contender to the WWF Championship. So they were trying to really build him up. Vader says that the colors of the Patriot are red, white, and blue. But after tonight, they're gonna be black and blue. And he says it's time. It's Vader time. And obviously Vader was a guy he was a huge signee they had gotten from WCW. He was a huge star. And after I talk about the match with the Patriot, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a rant on what they did with Vader, because I wasn't happy about it. Okay, so next match was Vader with Paul Bearer versus the Patriot. And yeah, Paul Bearer with Vader is just weird. Maybe because he's not like with The Undertaker or Kane, but it's still weird. It didn't really, I think, fit, but I mean, I guess they wanted him aligned with a big monster. Like, even Mankind, when he was aligned with Mankind, it was better. But I guess they wanted to get Paul Bearer on TV. And Taker was a face. Kane wasn't there yet. He was on his way. And then, obviously, Mankind would turn face. So, they needed someone for Paul Bearer to be with. And it was Vader that was the guy. Very weird. This match was, I thought, alright. It wasn't anything special. Vader dominates the first half of it, and he hits a lot of power moves onto the Patriot. The Patriot starts to make his comeback with some high shoulder tackles and arm drags. And then eventually the finish is the Patriot wins with the Uncle Slam after Vader goes for his Vader Bomb. And what pisses me off about this is, like I talked about before, Vader was a huge signing that they had gotten from WCW. They got him like in 1996, and he was huge. They had the rocket ship up his ass. He was being pushed really well, and they started off very well with Vader. And then SummerSlam 1996 happened, and the match with Shawn Michaels happened, and obviously it buried Vader. Shawn Michaels literally buried him in the match, and then he obviously said, "Move!" So Vader didn't win the WWF title. That was crucial for Vader. It really hurt him. And then they did this dumb shit where they were aligning him with Paul Bearer. And then obviously he didn't win the WWF title at Final Four, whatever it was called, at that pay-per-view where it was Vader versus Undertaker versus Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then Vader just pretty much, after Kane came in, he pretty much fucking faded away into nothing. So, yeah, they fucked up Vader. And yeah, it sucks. Obviously, you had Bret Hart too, who was watching this match, and he acts like he's gonna make his way to the win. The Patriot keeps, calling him out. Vader ambushes him from behind. He attacks him. He goes to hit the Vader bomb, but Bret Hart puts the Canadian flag over him. Vader gets upset about this. And Vader breaks the flag over his knee, and they get into a brawl. Owen Hart gets involved, and they beat down Vader. The Patriot takes out Owen Hart, and the referees and stuff hold it back before he can get to Bret Hart, because this match was being used as a plot device. This match was being used to build up to Bret Hart versus the Patriot at In Your House Ground Zero. So that's exactly what it was used for. And yeah, this match was fine. It just pisses me off after what happened with Vader. And obviously you have the aftermath. I already talked about what happened with Owen Hart. The Patriot obviously really was just a stint that didn't really last long. He got pushed, and then obviously he got hurt and revealed all the stuff that happened with steroids and stuff toward the end of his career, and how he's retired now. And the Patriot, obviously, I saw wrestle recently. I did an indie show as well. I don't know if it was wrestling, but I saw him at an indie show. It's very weird to hear him come out to Kurt Angle's theme song and not have the "You Suck" chants. It's very weird. Bret Hart, obviously, he ended up retaining his WWF title against the Patriot. And then obviously he went on to have the match with Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series with the Montreal Screwjob. Ended up leaving for WCW. Things didn't really turn out for Bret Hart. Then eventually came back in 2010. 2006 he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then he eventually came out back in 2010. Had the feud with Vince McMahon. And then eventually now he's on good terms. He can just come back when he wants. And obviously Bret Hart, like I've talked about before, hates me, and I've talked about why before on this channel. Won't go into too much detail. Owen Hart's a part of the reason too. Vader's nearly on his deathbed, from what I hear, which sucks. Feel bad for Vader. The Patriot, I already talked about the Patriot. That's it. So overall, if I had to rate this match, though, I thought it was pretty decent. I'll give it 2 3/4 stars. Okay, so next, Jim Ross interviews Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I'm going to talk about the build-up to this match. Obviously, the build-up was Stone Cold Steve Austin at the time was the both the Intercontinental and the one half of the WWF Tag Team Champions, and he had an IC title match against Owen Hart. And obviously, everybody knows the spot, if you watched wrestling before, where Owen Hart messes up the tombstone. And yeah, it's just really kind of like weird to watch back, because they show it in slow motion. You can actually like see Steve Austin's spine like move when he goes to hit the tombstone. It's pretty scary. And if you think about it, like that's a pretty important match in the history of the WWF, because that match we almost didn't get a Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, Stone Cold Steve Austin clearly was going to be the next top guy. It almost didn't happen because of that one spot, and it's very strange to say. So this was an interview to kind of determine what was going to be next for Stone Cold Steve Austin. He gets interviewed in his hotel room, and he talks about how when he got hurt, nobody sent him a card. No one called and asked him if he was okay. He wasn't expecting people to, but he thought it would have been nice. And he's upset that the WWE put him in a shit hotel room. And he offers Jim Ross some fruit. And he says that if Jim Ross doesn't start asking him the questions, he's going to have to throw him out the window. So Jim Ross wants him to address SummerSlam, his neck problems, and what's next for Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he talks about how at SummerSlam he's now the Intercontinental Champion, and he says that he was pretty scared because he never thought that he was going to walk again. He couldn't feel his arms or his legs when he got dropped on his head. And he says that Owen Hart, though, has an ass whipping coming. And he talks about how he's met with doctors, and doctors have told him he's got to do something else, but he doesn't plan on doing anything else. All he knows is wrestling, and he's going to continue doing it. He talks about how since he's been gone, he's been a little bit depressed. He's been drinking beers and stuff like that. And he talks about how no matter what, whether he can wrestle or not, Owen Hart has an ass whipping coming. And then he says that he's going to be in your house, Ground Zero, whether it's to hand over the WWF World Tag Team titles, or it's to wrestle in that fatal 4-way tag team match. And then that was pretty much the gist of the promo. Then when he's done, he tells Jim Ross to get the hell out. And overall, I thought this was a great promo by Stone Cold. I thought he was very good. And obviously, this was the WWF still really trying to push him. And obviously, I believe Stone Cold didn't end up. I believe he ended up attending Ground Zero, but he did not end up wrestling the Fatal 4-Way Tag match. I believe they replaced him. I believe he was replaced with another team, and I don't know who won the tag team titles from there. And then obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin would come back, and obviously he's the biggest. He became like the biggest star during the Attitude Era. He won the WWF title from Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14, and he pretty much was the big star of the Attitude Era. He was the face, but obviously these neck problems never went away. It caused him to miss pretty much the entire year of 2000 of the WWF, and the WWF was pretty much in the same situation again. And then obviously it kind of caused him to have to retire early, and his wrestling ability was a little bit affected by it because he couldn't really do a lot of moves because of his neck problems, but he still went ahead. And obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin ended up wrestling his last match at WrestleMania 19 against The Rock, and then you still see him sporadically. Now he has his own podcast, and it's very strange. So overall, I thought this was a very good interview, and it makes me happy to see kind of and very informative to see what almost was, what almost wasn't, if that makes sense. Okay, so then we had the main event. It was Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Shawn Michaels with China Inside versus Mankind and The Undertaker. And Shawn Michaels, when he was making his entrance, was like kind of being weird towards China, like groping her. It was kind of funny. And I thought this was a really good match. It was definitely worth watching this show for. We had Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Mankind start off the matchup, and Mankind, it starts kicking Hunter Hearst Helmsley's ass, but then eventually Shawn Michaels and Hunter Hearst Helmsley start double teaming Mankind as The Undertaker sits there and doesn't do anything, and they beat him up, but Mankind's able to fight his way out of the corner. And then eventually Undertaker gets tagged in, and he starts going off on Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and he goes off, and Shawn Michaels goes to charge at The Undertaker. Undertaker hit the backdrop outside the ring on Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Undertaker continues to dominate. Shawn Michaels hits partially a Sweet Chin music onto The Undertaker, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Shawn Michaels were able to dominate the matchup for a bit, but then Undertaker starts to gain back in control. He knocks Michaels out of the ring, and then he calls out his insurance policy, ravishing Rick Rude, and then it goes to commercials, so we don't really see anything else that happens. And we see that Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Shawn Michaels dominated Mankind, and they hit some nice tag team moves on him. They hit a high and low on Mankind. They throw him in. Hunter Hearst Helmsley throws him right into the steps, and Shawn Michaels goes for Sweet Chin Music. He tags Hunter Hearst Helmsley in, but Mankind gets him into a mandible claw, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley takes him out, and he goes for the pedigree, but Mankind counters it, and he lands ball, and he accidentally falls right on his nuts, which looks like it killed. And then the Undertaker gets the hot tag. He starts going off on Shawn Michaels and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Shawn Michaels tries to fight back. He's on the apron, but Undertaker knocks him off the apron, and he goes right into the guardrail. It looks sick. And then Undertaker starts attacking Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Ravishing Rick Rude goes to hit him with a chair, but Undertaker sees it and goes after Ravishing Rick Rude. Then he hits a choke slam on Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Shawn Michaels hits a Undertaker off the head twice with the steel chair. He gets busted open, and then Undertaker sits up, and Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Chyna take off, and Ravishing Rick Rude, and then that was the end of the show. Overall, I thought this was a really good match. I thought this was a nice way to build to, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker at Ground Zero, because that's where this match was going, and obviously the aftermath of this match came. Shawn Michaels and Undertaker would fight to a no contest at In Your House Ground Zero. I believe Mankind and Hunter Hearst Helmsley had a match with each other where Hunter Hearst Helmsley went over. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels would fight in the first ever Hell in a Cell match, where Shawn Michaels would win. He would become the #1 contender to the WWF title. He defeated Bret Hart to win the WWF title in the Montreal Screwjob, which obviously everybody knows about that moment. And then the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels would have a rematch. And then obviously Kane would appear. Kane would show up. He would show up with Paul Bear. By the way, I didn't mention what Paul Bear was. He's now dead. But yeah, Kane would show up and cost Undertaker the Hell in a Cell match. And then Shawn Michaels and Undertaker would have a rematch for the WWF title at the Royal Rumble in 1998 in a casket match where Shawn Michaels went over because of Kane. Obviously, then Shawn Michaels, he injured his back in that match. Shawn Michaels had dropped the WWF title to Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then obviously they did the whole Austin era has begun. The WWF went right into the Attitude Era, and then Undertaker went on to wrestle Kane at WrestleMania and Unforgiven in an Inferno match, and he won both matches. And then yeah, pretty much Undertaker continued his run in WWF, and then with Shawn Michaels gone, Hunter Hearst Helmsley was able to take the ball and kind of take Shawn Michaels' spot because D-Generation X started to form even more. Then it became more of a comedy faction, which was awesome. And Hunter Hearst Helmsley, they finally figured out that he had 3 H's in the beginning of his name, so it's like, why don't we just call him Triple H? And that's exactly what happened. He became like a huge star in the WWF. He became a big star. He became a 14-time World Heavyweight Champion in WWE and a Continental Champion. He was a 3-time Intercontinental Champion. And then Shawn Michaels, though, ended up returning. Shawn Michaels came back in 2002 and had that great feud with Triple H that lasted to 2004, and obviously he had the best run of his career at that time. Chyna obviously ended up, because Triple H was married to the boss's daughter, obviously then Chyna was kind of kicked out of the picture, and then Chyna ended up passing away too, in April of 2016, and now I obviously talked about that in the beginning of the video. And then what else? Mankind obviously was played by Mick Foley. Mick Foley would continue his run. He would go through the 3 stages of Cactus Jack, Dude Love, and Mankind. Obviously, Mick Foley's the only one that's able to do that. Him and Triple H would have a ton of great feuds, and Taker and Shawn Michaels would resume their feud and have great matches at WrestleMania 25 and 26. We've had multiple DX reunions, and Shawn Michaels retired at WrestleMania 26 against The Undertaker. Undertaker just recently retired this year at WrestleMania 33, and Triple H is still going. Now he runs NXT, and he's still partially wrestling, so and Mankind, obviously, Mick Foley's obviously retired now, and yeah. And overall, this match for star rating gets a 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I didn't really mind the fuck finish because they were building this match really was used to protect all competitors. But overall, I thought this was a really good match, and where everybody went from this match, I thought was nice. And overall, I actually thought this was actually a pretty good show to go back and watch. Now, obviously, there were still some steps that the WWF had to take. But you could definitely see on this show that they were still taking steps to enter in the Attitude Era and really changing their product. And this show was a big example of it. Obviously, they weren't fully there yet, but they were getting there. And I thought this was actually a good show. Nothing fantastic, but a good show. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Match quality wise, it wasn't, but storylines wise and stuff, it was. You could see like I love the stuff they did with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I like all the stuff they did building up to the main event tag match. I thought the opening tag match with the Legion of Doom, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog was pretty good. Obviously the promo with the Nation of Domination with Rocky Maivia, that was pretty cool. And I had some other the Brian Pillman Goldust stuff I thought was nice to go back and watch. And obviously they just had some nice stuff. You could just see that the WWF was slowly changing into the Attitude Era. And now obviously it's called WWE. I know that, by the way. I'm just saying it WWF because I like to call it what the show that it was at the time, to be specific. And you could definitely see like where everybody became a top player, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, like The Rock, like Triple H. And then obviously you had other established guys like Taker, Mankind, and there was somebody else that was there. But some of them pissed me off. But there was some stuff that pissed me off, like they brought in Too Cool Scorpio just to make him Flash Funk. And Vader, what happened with Vader? But you definitely saw like you even saw Jesse James, who became the Road Dogg on this show. And Brian Christopher, who became Grandmaster Sexay, and he didn't become like a big star or anything, but he became a decent star. And then you had there was somebody else that was on this show that I thought was Flash Funk, and then yeah, you obviously had LOD, a great tag team. So overall, I thought this was a pretty good show. If I had to rate it, I'll rate it a 7 out of 10. Just a good show. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed these. I plan on resuming these in the future. I plan on doing these every week. Where I sit down and review a past wrestling show every Friday, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But that's pretty much it, guys. Please make sure you guys like, comment, and share this video so people will watch it. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel for more content, and click on the bell so that way every time you upload a video, you guys will get the notification for it. And make sure you guys do the same for my CM Brothers and on the Talkinator channel. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.